If you care about real wartime survival knowledge, not recycled trivia, you're in the right place. So, go ahead and subscribe to the channel right now and leave a comment sharing which country's civilian experience you want covered next, because what we're getting into today is the kind of history that honestly never made it into official reports. During World War II, food was power, food was life, and food was something families learned to hide better than valuables. Occupying armies confiscated crops, livestock, and pantry stores with ruthless efficiency. What survived often did so because civilians adapted, concealed, fermented, buried, and disguised what little they had. This episode is about 8 foods families across occupied Europe quietly protected, how they did it, and what survival lessons still apply today. Why food hiding became a civilian survival skill almost overnight. Occupation meant ration cards that never matched reality and requisition orders that stripped villages bare. Soldiers searched homes repeatedly, learning quickly where food was usually stored. Families who survived learned to think like hunters being hunted. They decentralized their food, altered its appearance, and hid it in places that violated soldiers' assumptions. The modern lesson is simple and practical. Never store critical supplies in predictable locations, and never rely on one method of concealment. Grain and flour were hidden because bread meant survival, not comfort. Wheat, rye and barley were priority seizure items. Families hid grain inside double walls, under floorboards, and mixed it with animal feed to reduce its value at a glance. Some households buried sealed grain jars in gardens and rotated them seasonally to prevent mould. Today, this translates into storing staple carbohydrates in multiple containers, some visible and some concealed, with moisture control as the priority. Potatoes survived because they could disappear underground again. Occupying soldiers knew to look in cellars, but potatoes offered a unique advantage. Families replanted part of their stored crop in shallow garden trenches to disguise reserves as future harvests. Others hid sacks beneath compost piles, where heat masked scent and slowed spoilage. The survival principle still works. Food stored where biological activity is expected attracts less suspicion and remains naturally temperature regulated. Dried beans and legumes lasted because they didn't smell like food. Beans were calorie-dense, protein-rich, and, often ignored compared to meat or bread. Families hid them in fabric sacks sewn into mattress linings, attic insulation, or even false ceilings. Their low odour and long shelf life made them, just ideal. For modern preparedness, legumes remain one of the most efficient hidden foods when stored dry and protected from pests. Fermented vegetables were disguised as waste or animal feed. Sauerkraut, pickled beets, and fermented turnips were often left in plain sight because, honestly, soldiers assumed barrels contained livestock fodder or spoiled food. Civilians labelled containers deliberately poorly or mixed vegetable scraps on top just to reduce interest. The practical takeaway is that fermentation not only preserves nutrients but also disguises value. Learning basic fermentation today adds both resilience and, stealth to food storage. Cheese survived by being made undesirable to outsiders. Hard cheeses were buried, smoked heavily, or aged past what occupying troops considered edible. In France and parts of Eastern Europe, families intentionally over-aged cheese to repel confiscation. When needed, they trimmed mould and used the interior. Modern survivalists can apply this by learning traditional preservation methods that prioritize longevity over immediate appeal. Rendered animal fat was hidden because it looked industrial, not edible. Lard and tallow were critical cooking calories. Families poured them into jars labelled as lubricant, soap base or lamp fuel. Stored in workshops or sheds instead of kitchens, they escaped seizure. The lesson here is labelling and context matter. Storage location can be as important as concealment itself. Honey stayed hidden because it rarely looked like a stockpile. You know, honey was medicinal, caloric, and it just never spoiled. Beekeeping families would hide surplus comb inside walls or even bury sealed crocks. Soldiers often ignored honey unless it was on a commercial scale. For modern use, honey remains, honestly, one of the most reliable long-term foods, and it even doubles as wound care and trade currency. Dried fruit survived because it blended into everyday clutter. Apples, plums and berries were strung on cords and hung among tools, laundry or firewood. Most of the time, soldiers rarely counted it as stored food. Today, drying fruit is still one of the easiest ways to preserve vitamins discreetly, and you don't even need any specialized equipment. What ties all these foods together is not secrecy alone, but adaptability. Families didn't hide everything in one place. They rotated locations, altered appearances, and accepted short-term inconvenience for long-term survival. Really, the actionable lesson is clear. Diversify storage, disguise value, and never assume official systems will protect you in a crisis. If this kind of deep, civilian-level wartime survival history matters to you, subscribe now. Share this episode with someone who values real preparedness knowledge and comment below with the next topic you want covered. This channel exists to preserve the lessons history paid for in hunger, and your support keeps that knowledge alive.